All right. Welcome back to Storytime with Mrs. Walker. We are going to pick up where we left off. We are continuing our book, Ban This Book. And Amy Ann and her crew have assembled that library in her locker where they keep all the books that have been banned, and they're sharing them out with students. Here we go. Um, this chapter is called Helen Comes. There was another school board meeting next month. I didn't go, but I knew what happened. Mrs. Jones argued again that none of the books should be removed from the library, and the school board agreed with Mrs. Spencer. All the books on her second list were officially banned. The very next day in social studies, Mr. Vaughn told us we were going to start studying the Bill of Rights. The founding fathers wrote the Constitution to explain how the new American government would work. But they realized they would need an extra part to talk about the freedoms Americans automatically got that the government couldn't take away. That's what the Bill of Rights is. It's 10 amendments to protect the natural rights of all citizens. Now, you guys talked about this, I believe, a little bit in fourth grade social studies with Miss Oliver. So, Bill of Rights should be a little familiar. The Constitution was important because it told the world how we were going to run our government, Mr. Vaughn said. The Bill of Rights might be even more important, though, because it said that our new country was going to be about. It said, here are the rights we think are important that no one can take away from us, not even the government. We added a lot more later on, but the first 10 are the very famous. It was the first document of its kind in the world. For social studies unit, I'm going to split you up into pairs, Mr. Vaughn told us. Each team will study a different amendment. Your assignment will be to give a presentation to the class that explains what your amendment means. That how you do that, what kind of presentation you give is all up to you. Rebecca's hand shot up. Mr. Vaughn, can I do the Sixth Amendment, please? Sure, Rebecca, Mr. Vaughn said. He erased something in his notes and wrote something new. I looked at Rebecca like she was crazy. The Sixth Amendment is about the right to trial by jury, she told me, and the right to counsel. Does anyone else have a favorite amendment they want to do? Mr. Vaughn asked. Not surprisingly, no one else did. All right, Mr. Vaughn said. Jana, I want you and Tracy to take the Fifth Amendment. Kevin, you and Danny take the Second Amendment. It turned out while Mr. Vaughn gave all the other assignments, Rebecca and I had made another $7 in the most recent bake sale. I was trying to decide whether or not to buy How to Eat Fried Worms or Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl. They were really hard to compare. Amy Ann said, Mr. Vaughn, are you with us? Sorry, I said. Beside me, I could sense Rebecca's eyes boring into me, and I focused on Mr. Vaughn. I'm assigning you and Trey the First Amendment. That all right? Was that all right? Was I all right with working in a social studies project with the son of my arch enemy? The boy who would rat me out the second I slipped up and mentioned the BBLL? No, I was definitely not all right with that. But instead, I said, okay, all right, everybody get together with your partner and start reading about your amendment, Mr. Vaughn said. I'm coming around to help. Everyone else got up and put their desks together. I sat where I was and made Trey drag his desk all the way across the room to me. He parked it right in front of mine, with a thud making my pencil pop out of its little ditch. Trey closed his notebook and I crossed my arms and stared at my textbook. You don't like me much, do you? Trey asked. I wanted to laugh. Don't like you much. I wanted to say, oh, why would that be, Trey? Because besides your mom banning my favorite book, you drew an awful picture of me last year? Trey likes to draw. That's his thing. I hated to admit it, but he was actually pretty good. He was so good that last year, Trey and I both were in Mrs. Maple's room. He decided to draw each of us as animals. Mrs. Maple was a wise old maple tree. Kenny Haskins was good at soccer, so he drew a cheetah. Lavena Maddox, who was a good singer, he wanted to be a singer when she grew up. He drew as a songbird. Daniel Ford, who loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, He drew as a Ninja Turtle. Everybody loved the picture she drew of them except me. The picture Trey drew of Amy Ann Olander was of a mouse sitting on a book chewing its tail. He didn't draw me as a cheetah or Ninja Turtle songbird. He drew me as a wimpy little mouse. Trey bent his head down to look at me, and I realized I hadn't said anything in a long time. Listen, Amy Ann, he said. The room intercom cracked to life, making us all jump. Mr. Vaughn, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you please send Jeffrey Gonzalez and Amy Ann Olander to the office? Ooh, the rest of the class said. Everybody always did that every time anybody got called the office, like you were in big trouble, even if it was just because you had a dentist appointment. By this time, they all knew might be right. Half the eyes in the rooms were on me, and I knew why. They all knew I ran the BBL, and they were thinking the exact same thing I was. Amy Ann is busted. I'll send them right along, Miss Perry, Mr. Vaughn said, motioning at the same time for us to move on. My legs felt like jello as I stood. Across the room, Rebecca and Danny's faces looked like they had seen Helen's ghost in the pond. I didn't know if I was even going to be able to walk to the door without collapsing. I put my hand on Trey's desk to steady myself and looked at me. I hope you're not in trouble, he said. The next chapter, the banana room. Hope you're not in trouble. That rank rat fink, Trey. He knew I was in trouble because he was the one who'd ratted me out. I hope you're not in trouble. Ha ha, very funny, Trey. I was right where he wanted me to be, walking the long march of death with Jeffrey Gonzalez to the principal's office. I sucked my braids, and the more I thought about it, the madder I got at Trey. So what if a bunch of banned books are in my locker? I'm not breaking any rules, Trey. That's what I wanted to say to him. Because your mom took him out of the library doesn't mean she can take him out of my locker. I didn't do anything wrong, Jeffrey said, and I jumped a little. I was surprised to hear him say what I was thinking. He clearly thought he was in big trouble, too. That's why he'd been called to the office. I had no idea. Jeffrey was a small and round Mexican kid with short, spiky hair and Harry Potter glasses. He was quiet, just like me. But he was quiet because his brain was always somewhere else. The only time you ever really get him talking was when you ask him about science fiction movies he liked. In second grade, Lena Harvey called him a space cadet, and the nickname stuck. I can't have done anything wrong, Jeffrey said. At least I don't think so. Did you do anything? I guess not everybody had heard about the banned books library locker. If he had, he would have known exactly why I was being called to the office. We turned the corner to the fourth grade hall. The office was steps away. As soon as I saw it, my anger was gone. Rebecca's word came back to me. Definitely suspended. I didn't want to get suspended. I couldn't be suspended. No kids had gotten suspended the whole time I'd been at Shelbourne Elementary. Getting suspended was something that only happened to really bad kids. Serious troublemakers, kids who were going to grow up to become people who chained dogs up in their front yard and threw trash out of their car window. Jeffrey and I went to the office. The secretary, Mrs. Perry, told Jeffrey Principal Boretsky would see him first. He told me to sit and wait. Jeffrey swallowed and wished me luck, glanced, and went to the principal's office. The door closed behind him. I sat in one of the chairs outside Detective Borensky's office like a criminal waiting to go into the interrogation room, except I wasn't a principal. I never did anything to get in trouble. Never did anything, period. But that wasn't true, was it? I was here because I had done something. For a reason, I had decided to go get as many banned books from Mrs. Spencer's list from the library and loan them out to people in my class. Why I had done that? Why did I care? What did it matter if Mrs. Spencer banned books? My parents would buy me whatever books I wanted to read. I sucked on my braids and wondered what had gotten into me and why I had kept quiet and never did anything. People who said and did whatever thing they were thinking got into trouble. Principal Borinsky's door opened and she led Jeffrey out. He looked stunned, like someone had told him he wasn't really such a thing as aliens. I'm sure glad your grandmother is a terrific person, Jeffrey. I know you'll miss her very much. Go ahead and collect your things, and you can wait here until your parents come. Jeffrey nodded. He barely left the office without looking at me. Mrs. Olander, Principal Borinsky said, gesturing me to join her in the office. Any doubt I might have had as to why I was being in the call to the office was gone. No adult ever called you by your last name unless you were in deep, deep trouble. I stepped into Principal Borinsky's office. I'd never been there before. It was a square little room with white center blocks and no windows. I thought there might be one of those big mirrors they have in interrogation rooms where people on the other side can see through. But the only other things on the walls were lots of framed certificates and plaques with her name on them, pictures of her family, and bananas. Lots and lots of bananas. There were bananas everywhere. Banana paintings, bananas with arms and legs and faces, monkeys with bananas, banana hats, banana slippers, Banana Republic ads, a collection of those blue stickers that come on banana. Basically, anything and everything that said or showed a banana on it. I guess the kindergartners had been giving her banana stuff forever. Principal Borwiski told me to sit. I sat down behind her banana decorated desk. Mrs. Olander, we need to talk about your locker, she said. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do anything bad. I just hated so much what Mrs. Spencer took away my favorite book. First of all I was going to do was read the book she banned. Then I started collecting them, and other people wanted to read them. And it wasn't anybody's fault. I swear I'll take them home and never bring them to school again. Just don't suspend me. That's what I wanted to say. But I was so scared, all I said was, my locker. Principal leaned forward. Yes, specifically the piece of paper you have taped on the outside of your locker. The piece of paper? The one that says banned books at Shelbourne Elementary. Ah, the list of banned books I put on my locker. What was she talking about that? The books inside were the big deal. I felt a little hiccup. What was the list all this was about? Or did Mrs. Boronsky know why I put the list on my locker? I started grinning at a banana with sunglasses on her desk, and I hoped she didn't know the stack of books inside my locker. First, Principal Wincy said, I don't like the word banned. Those books weren't banned from the library, they were removed from the library. What's the difference? I asked. I threw my hand over the mouth. Have I just said that out loud, what I was thinking? Principal Warinsky's got that you don't know anything tone that voice gets when they don't like being questioned. The difference, Mrs. Borinsky said, is that in one case, the books are banned arbitrarily. Do you understand what arbitrarily means? For no reason? Yes. It can also mean based on one person's opinion, not on others. In this case, the books weren't removed arbitrarily. They were inappropriate, and more than one person agreed that was true, a whole school board, in fact, and so they were removed. But just one person, Mrs. Spencer, was what I wanted to say, didn't like the book, and she got the board to ban it. She helped other people who didn't like books do the same thing. There might be lots of people who do like them or don't care. But this time I didn't say anything. Blurting out an objection was one thing, arguing with the principal was another. Still, I didn't see the difference between banning and removing one. Either way, kids couldn't read them. That's when I remembered why I'd started the BBLL in the first place. Good books shouldn't be hidden away. They should be read by as many people as many times as possible. But that wasn't really true. It wasn't just good books that shouldn't be hidden away. It was all books, any books. It didn't matter what they were about or whether you liked them or whether Mrs. Spencer liked them or the school board liked them. I was lucky. My parents would buy me any book I wanted if I asked them to. But not everybody's parents would do that. Not everybody's parents could do that. That's what libraries were for, to make sure that everyone had the same access to the same books as everyone else did. That's why I'd started the banned books library locker. That was why I was going to get every last book on Mrs. Spencer had banned, even Captain Underpants. I think it's the same thing, I said out loud, my voice a little shaky, but I kept going. Banning or remove, either way, people can't read them, and that's really all that matters. Mrs. Borensky took a deep breath. Regardless, she said, the school board is ultimate authority here, and they've made the decisions that the books should be removed. There's no reason to go advertising it. If there's nothing wrong with it, then why do you care if anybody finds out? I wanted to ask her, but I didn't say that though. I'd said enough already, but as I thought it, I realized I could be asking myself the same question. If there was nothing wrong with the BBLL, then why was keeping it a secret? I blushed, feeling very guilty about the BBLL all over again. So you take it down by the end of the period. That wasn't a question. Next chapter, BBL BBLL Inc. I took down the list of banned books by the end of the period. In its place, I put up a construction paper sign I drawed that said, Go Eagles, number one. Eagles were the Shelburne Elementary mascot. Mrs. Bowinsky would be happy to see my sign. She liked school she liked school spirit. She would not be happy to see what was on the back of it. That's where I taped my old band book list. If you flipped up the Go Eagles number one sign, the list was right there. After all, I still had to have some way to let people know what books I had. I wanted more books for the BBLL, though. I wanted all the books on Mrs. Spencer had banned. I wanted a giant tower of books that filled my locker. I wanted everyone to read them. Rebecca had said that all to do with that we needed to incorporate. I hereby call the first meeting of the BBL Board of Trustees, she announced officially, even though it was just me and Danny sitting with her at one end of the table in the cafeteria. She had an extra long pad to make notes on, which she only used because it was a legal pad. President Rebecca Zimmerman, Esquire, Danny Purcell, and Amy Ann Olanger. I liked how I came last, even though I was the one who started the BBLL. Do we really need to do this? I asked. We do if this corporation wants to grow. First, we need to elect officers. I nominate myself as chief financial officer and legal counsel. Danny and I stared at her. Danny shrugged. Okay. You're supposed to say second if you agree, Rebecca said. Second, Danny and I said, Rebecca huffed. You're not both supposed to say it, just one of you. Then I'll say all in favor. Danny and I looked at each other. Me, you're supposed to say I, Rebecca said. Like I, Danny said, pointing to where his eyes were covered. I, like AIE, he said. Rebecca said, it means yes. Then why don't we just say yes? Rebecca looked like she was going to explode, so Danny jumped in. I, and he said quickly. Rebecca looked at me. What? I said, aren't you going to vote? I thought only one of us was supposed to say it. That's the second thing, Rebecca said. When I say all in favor, everyone votes aye or nay. Can't we just skip all that? You're the one in charge of the money. Rebecca sagged. I felt bad. She just wanted to be played the part of a lawyer. I knew, but if she kept this up, we were going to be here the rest of lunch period and never get anything done. Danny flicked his hair into place. So, what do I get to do? You're going to be in charge of alternate acquisitions, Rebecca said. That means getting books we can't afford to buy. Sweet. I've got some ideas about that. So far, I've been asking fourth graders to see what their brothers and sisters might have. But I know some kids in third grade and fifth grade. I'll put the word out. I bet I can dig up a lot more books. Just don't put the word out too much, I said. I'd already told them about my meeting with Principal Banana. The only reason I was still living and breathing was because she hadn't found out about the banned books locker. Do you want to check out the books, don't you? Danny asked. Of course. I'll just don't go hanging around signs for the BBL in the hallway. Rebecca finished writing Danny's title down. All right, that leaves Amy in. What's she? Danny asked. President and Chief Librarian, Rebecca said. President and Chief Librarian? I like that. Even though I'd been calling the locker library a library, I hadn't thought of myself as a librarian. Just the person with a locker. I didn't know anything about being a librarian except for what I had seen Mrs. Jones do. And I said so. Well, you're going to have to learn, Rebecca said. The first thing we're going to have to do is how to keep track of how long people have the books. Yeah, I've been waiting forever to read that Shel Silverstein books, but TJ still has it. I don't want to have two dates and library fines and all that, I said. Well, you need to consider it, or at least due dates, or some of the books are never going to come back. Rebecca and Danny went on talking about the bake sale, which books he thought he'd be able to get. But I was still thinking about better ways of keeping track of who had what book and how long they had it. There was a clipboard of the list in my locker getting lots of pages long. Every time I got a book back, I had to skim through the names and holes to find out who wanted it next. The BBL was getting too big for its britches. But, like my grandmother liked to say, but I was going to have to figure out a better system. And there was only one person I knew to ask. And we will pick up there on Wednesday with Tools of the Trade. All right?
Oh, man.